هذا النصر العظيم الذي تحقق في الحقيقة يعود إلى فضل الله سبحانه وتعالى وحده، ليس بمهارة منا ولا حيلة ولا تفوق، إنما هو محض فضل الله سبحانه وتعالى. الله سبحانه وتعالى يختص برحمته من يشاء، والله سبحانه وتعالى ينظر في قلوب عباده فيصطفي منهم ما يكون أهلا لفضله ولرحمته ولنعمه. فهؤلاء الإخوة 19 الذين خرجوا وبذلوا وقدموا أرواحهم في سبيل الله، من الله سبحانه وتعالى عليهم بهذا الفتح الذي نتمتع به نحن الآن. والناظر في أحوال هؤلاء الإخوة يرى أنه يعني لا مقارنة بين قوة 19 رجلا وبين قوة أمريكا، ولا تناسب بين قوة 19 رجلا وبين الخسائر التي حدثت في أمريكا، ولكن اللجوء إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى والاستعانة به والتوكل عليه يفتح لك فتوحا أنت لا تعرفها. والله سبحانه وتعالى يدلك وييسر لك ويقويك ويمدك، بل ويدلك في نفسك على كنوز وعلى موارد وعلى قوة أنت.
12 of the 13 muscle hijackers, excluding Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Midar, came from Saudi Arabia. Satam al-Saskami, Wael al-Sheri, Walid al-Sheri, Abdulaziz al-Amari, Ahmed al-Ghamdi, Hamza al-Ghamdi, Mohand al-Sheri, Majid Makid, Salim al-Hazmi, Saeed al-Ghamdi, Ahmed al-Haznawi, and Ahmed al-Nami. The remaining recruit, Fayez Bani Hamad, came from the United Arab Emirates. He appears to have played a unique role among the muscle hijackers because of his work with one of the pilot's financial facilitators, Mustafa al-Hassawi. Saudi authorities interviewed the relatives of these men and have briefed them on what they found. The muscle hijackers came from a variety of educational and societal backgrounds. All were between the ages of 20 and 28. Most were unemployed, with no more than a high school education, and were unmarried. 4 of them, Ahmed al-Ghamdi, Saeed al-Ghamdi, Hamza al-Ghamdi, and Ahmed al-Haznawi, came from a cluster of 3 towns in the Al-Baha region, an isolated and underdeveloped town of Saudi Arabia, and shared the same tribal affiliation. None of the hijackers had a university degree, the muscle hijackers anyway. Their travel patterns and information from family members suggest that the 4 may have been in contact with each other as early as the fall of 1999. 5 more, Wael al-Sheri, Walid al-Sheri, Abdul Aziz al-Amari, Mohand al-Sheri, and Ahmed al-Nami, came from the Asir province, a poor region in southwestern Saudi Arabia that borders Yemen. This weakly politicized area is sometimes called the Wild Frontier. Wael and Walid al-Sheri were brothers. All 5 in this group had begun university studies. Abdul Aziz al-Amari had graduated with honors from high school, had attained a degree from the Imam Muhammad Ibn Saud Islamic University, was married, and had a daughter. The 3 remaining muscle hijackers from Saudi Arabia were Satam al-Saskami, Majid Makid, and Salim al-Hazmi. Saskami came from Riyadh. Makid hailed from a small town called Makil, west of Medina. Sakami had very little education, and Makid had dropped out of university. Neither Sakami nor Makid appears to have had ties to the others or to any of the other operatives before getting involved with extremism, probably in 1999. Salim al-Hazmi, the younger brother of Nawaf, was born in Mecca. Salim's family recalled him as a quarrelsome teenager. His brother Nawaf probably recommended him for recruitment into Al-Qaeda. One of Al-Qaeda members who knew them said that Nawaf pleaded with bin Laden to allow his brother Salim to participate in the 9/11 operation. Detainees have offered varying reasons for the use of so many Saudi operatives. Ramzi bin al-Shib argued that al-Qaeda wanted to send a message to the government of Saudi Arabia about its relationship with the United States. Several other al-Qaeda figures, however, have stated that ethnically generally was not a factor in the selection of operatives unless it was important for security or operational reasons. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, for instance, denies that Saudis were chosen for the 9/11 plot to drive a wedge between the United States and Saudi Arabia, and stresses practical reasons for considering ethnic backgrounds when selecting operatives. He says that so many Saudis comprised the largest portion of the pool of recruits in al-Qaeda training camps and were easy to point out. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed estimates that in any given camp, 70% of the mujahideen were Saudi, 20% were Yemeni, and 10% were from elsewhere. Although Saudi and Yemeni trainees were most often willing to volunteer for suicide operations prior to 9/11, it was easier for Saudi operatives to get into the United States. Most of the Saudi muscle hijackers developed their ties to the extremists 2 or 3 years before the attacks. Their families often did not consider these young men religious zealots. Some were perceived as devout, others as lacking in faith. For instance, although Ahmed al-Ghamdi, Hamza al-Ghamdi, and Saeed al-Ghamdi attended prayer services regularly, and Abdul Aziz al-Amari often served as an imam at the mosque in Saudi Arabia, Sakami and Salim al-Hazmi appeared unconcerned with religion and, contrary to Islamic law, were known to drink alcohol. Like many other al-Qaeda operatives, the Saudis who eventually became the muscle hijackers were targeted for recruitment outside Afghanistan, probably in Saudi Arabia itself. Al-Qaeda recruiters, certain clerics, and, in a few cases, family members probably all played a role in spotting potential candidates. Several of the muscle hijackers seem to have been recruited through contacts at local universities and mosques. According to the head of one of the training camps in Afghanistan, some were chosen by unnamed Saudi sheikhs who had contacts with al-Qaeda. Abdul Aziz al-Amari, for example, is believed to have been a student of a radical Saudi cleric named Suleiman al-Alwan. His mosque, located in Al-Qasim province, is known among more radical clerics as a terrorist factory. The province is at the very heart of the strict Wahhabi movement in Saudi Arabia. Saeed al-Ghamdi and Mohand al-Shari also spent time with Al-Qasim, both breaking with their families. According to his father, Mohand al-Shari frequently visited this area, resulting in his failing exams at his university in Riyadh. Saeed al-Ghamdi transferred to a university in Al-Qasim, but he soon stopped talking to his family and dropped out of school without informing them. The majority of these Saudi recruits began to break with their families in late 1999 and early 2000. According to relatives, some recruits began to make arrangements for extended absences. Others exhibited marked changes in their behavior before disappearing. Salim al-Hazmi's father recounted that his son, who had problems with alcohol and petty theft, stopped drinking and started attending mosque regularly 3 months before he disappeared. Several family members remembered that their relatives had expressed a desire to participate in jihad, particularly in Chechnya. None had mentioned going to Afghanistan. These statements might be true or cover stories. The 4 recruits from the Al-Ghamdi tribe, for example, all told their families that they were going to Chechnya. Only 2, Ahmed al-Ghamdi and Saeed al-Ghamdi, had documentation suggesting travel to a Russian republic. Some aspiring Saudi mujahideen intending to go to Chechnya encountered difficulties along the way and diverted to Afghanistan. In 1999, Ibn al-Khattab, the primary commander of Arab nationals in Chechnya, reportedly had started turning away most foreign mujahideen because of their inexperience and inability to adjust to the local conditions. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed states that several of the 9/11 Mosul hijackers faced problems traveling to Chechnya and so went to Afghanistan, where they were drawn into al-Qaeda. Tawfiq bin Attash, also known as Khalid, has offered a more detailed story of how such diversions occurred. According to him, a member of Saudi Mujahideen who tried to go to Chechnya in 1999 to fight the Russians were stopped at the Turkish-Georgian border. Upon arriving in Turkey, they received phone calls at guest houses in places such as Istanbul and Ankara, informing them that the route to Chechnya via Georgia had been closed. These Saudis then decided to travel to Afghanistan, where they could train and wait to make another attempt to enter Chechnya during the summer of 2000. While training at al-Qaeda camps, a dozen of the Mosul hijackers heard bin Laden's speeches and volunteered to become suicide operatives, and eventually were selected as Mosul hijackers for the plane's operation. Khalid says he met a number of them at the Kandahar airport, where they were helping to provide extra security. He encountered bin Laden to use them. Khalid claims to have been closest with Saeed al-Ghamdi, whom he convinced to become a martyr, and whom he asked to recruit a friend, Ahmed al-Ghamdi, to the same cause. Although Khalid claims not to recall everyone from this group who were later chosen for the 9/11's operation, he does say that they were included Sakami, Walid, and Wal el-Sheri, Omari, al-Nami, al-Hamza al-Ghamdi, Salim al-Hazmi, and Majid Markid. According to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, operatives volunteered for suicide operations and, for the most part, were not pressured to martyr themselves. Upon arriving in Afghanistan, a recruit would fill out applications with standard questions such as, "What brought you to Afghanistan? How did you travel here? How did you hear about us? What attracted you to the cause? What is your educational background? Where have you worked before?" Applications were valuable for determining the potential of new arrivals, and for filtering out potential spies from among them, and for identifying recruits with special skills. For instance, as pointed out earlier, Hani Hanjour noted his pilot training. Prospective operatives also were asked whether they were prepared to serve as suicide operatives. Those who answered in the affirmative were interviewed by senior al-Qaeda Lieutenant Mohammed Atef. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed claims that the most important quality for any al-Qaeda operative was willingness to martyr himself. Khalid agrees and claims that this criteria had preeminence in selecting the plane's operation participants. The second most important criterion was the demonstrable patience. Khalid says because the planning for such attacks could take years. Khalid claims that it did not matter whether the hijackers had fought in jihad previously, since he believed that U.S. authorities were not looking for such operatives before 9/11. But Khalid Sheikh Mohammed asserts that young mujahideen with clean records were chosen to avoid raising alerts during travel. The al-Qaeda training camp head mentioned above adds that operatives with no prior involvement in activities likely to be known to international security agencies were purposely selected for the 9/11 attacks. Most of the Mosul hijackers first underwent basic training, similar to that other given al-Qaeda recruits. This included training in firearms, heavy weapons, explosives, and topography. Recruits learned discipline and military life. They were subjected to artificial stresses to measure their psychological fitness and commitment to jihad. At least 7 of the Saudi Mosul hijackers took this basic training regimen at the Al-Faruq camp near Kandahar. This particular camp appears to have been the preferred location for vetting and training the potential muscle hijackers because of its proximity to bin Laden and senior al-Qaeda leadership. Two others, Satam al-Sakami and Majid Makid, trained at Kaldeen, another large basic training facility located near the capital of Afghanistan, Kabul, where Khalid al-Mihdhar had trained in the mid-1990s. By the time operatives for the planes operation were picked in mid-2000, some of them had training in Afghanistan for months. Others were just arriving for the first time, and still others may have been returning at the prior visits to the camps. According to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Osama bin Laden would travel to the camps to deliver lectures and meet the trainees personally. If bin Laden believed the trainee held promise for a special operation, that trainee would be invited to the al-Qaeda's leader's compound at Tanark Farms for further meetings. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed claims that bin Laden could assess new trainees very quickly, in about 10 minutes, and that many of the 9/11 hijackers were selected in this manner. Bin Laden, assisted by Mohammed Atef, personally chose all the future muscle hijackers for the planes operation, primarily between the summer of 2000 and April 2001. Upon choosing a trainee, bin Laden would ask him to swear loyalty for a suicide operation. After the selection and oath swearing, the operative would be sent to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed for training and the filming of a martyrdom video, a function Khalid Sheikh Mohammed supervised as head of al-Qaeda's media committee. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed sent the muscle hijacker recruits on to Saudi Arabia to obtain U.S. visas. He gave them money, about $2,000 each, and instructed them to return to Afghanistan for more training after obtaining the visas. At this early stage, the operatives were not told details about the operation. The majority of the Saudi muscle hijackers obtained U.S. visas in Jeddah or Riyadh between September and November of 2000. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed told potential hijackers to acquire new, clean passports in their home countries before applying for a U.S. visa. This was to avoid raising suspicion about previous travel to countries where al-Qaeda operatives operated. 14 of the 19 hijackers, including 9 of the Saudi muscle hijackers, obtained new passports. Some of these passports were then likely discovered and doctored by al-Qaeda leaders. In addition to the operatives who eventually participated in the 9/11 attacks as muscle hijackers, bin Laden apparently selected at least 9 of the Saudis who, for various reasons, did not end up taking part in the operation. They were Mohammed Mani Ahmad al-Qahtani, Khalid Saeed Ahmed al-Zahrani, Ali Abed al-Rahman, al-Faqiz al-Ghamdi, Saeed al-Baluchi, Qutayba al-Najid, Zuhar al-Thubati, Saeed Abdullah Saeed al-Ghamdi, Saud al-Rashid, and Mushabib al-Hamlan. A 10th individual, a Tunisian with Canadian citizenship named Abdul Jaruf Jadeh, may have been a candidate to participate in 9/11, or he had been a candidate for a later attack. These candidate hijackers either backed out, had trouble obtaining needed travel documents, or were removed from the operation by the al-Qaeda leadership. Khalid believed that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed wanted between 4 and 6 operatives per plane. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed stated that al-Qaeda had originally planned to use 25 or 26 hijackers, but ended up with only the 19. Having acquired U.S. visas in Saudi Arabia, the muscle hijackers returned to Afghanistan for special training in late 2000 to early 2001. The training reportedly was conducted at the Al-Matar complex by Abu Turab al-Jordani, one of only a handful of al-Qaeda operatives who, according to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, was aware of the full details of the plane's operation. Abu Tarab taught the operatives how to conduct hijackings, disarm air marshals, and handle explosives. He also trained them in bodybuilding and provided them with a few basic English words and phrases. According to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Abu Tarab even had the training butcher a sheep and a camel with a knife to prepare to use knives during the hijackings. The recruits learned to focus on storming the cockpit at the earliest opportunity when the doors first opened, and to worry about seizing control over the rest of the plane later. The operatives were taught about other kinds of attack as well, such as truck bombing, so that they would not be able to disclose the exact nature of their operation if they were caught. According to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the Mossad did not learn the full details, including the plan to hijack planes and fly them into buildings before reaching the United States. After training in Afghanistan, the operatives went to a safe house maintained by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in Karachi, Pakistan, and stayed there temporarily before being deployed to the United States via the United Arab Emirates. The safe house was run by an al-Qaeda operative, Abd al-Rahim Ghulam Rabbani, also known as Abu Rahmah, a close associate of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who assisted him for 3 years by finding apartments and lending logistical support to operatives Khalid Sheikh Mohammed would send. According to an al-Qaeda facilitator, operatives were brought to the safe houses by a trusted Pakistani al-Qaeda courier named Abdullah Sindahi, who also worked for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. The future hijackers usually arrived in groups of 2 or 3, staying at the safe house for as long as 2 weeks. The facilitator has identified each operative whom he assisted as KSM's direction in the spring of 2001. Before the operatives left Pakistan, each of them received $10,000 from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed for future expenses. From Pakistan, the operatives transited through the United Arab Emirates en route to the United States. In the Emiratis, they were assisted primarily by al-Qaeda operatives Ali Abdul Aziz Ali and Mustafa al-Hassawi. Ali apparently assisted 9 future hijackers between April and June 2001 as they came through Dubai. He also helped them with plane tickets, traveler's checks, and hotel reservations. He also taught them about everyday aspects of life in the West, such as purchasing clothes and ordering food. Dubai, a modern city with easy access to a major airport, travel agencies, hotels, and Western commercial establishments, was an ideal transit point. Ali reportedly assumed the operatives he was helping were involved in a big operation in the United States. He did not know the details. When he asked Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to send him an assistant, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed dispatched Mustafa al-Hassawi, who had worked at al-Qaeda's media committee in Kandahar. Hassawi helped send the last 4 operatives, other than Khalid al-Midar, to the United States from the United Arab Emirates. Hassawi would consult with Mohammed Atta about the hijackers' travel schedules to the United States, and later check with Atta to confirm that each had arrived. Hassawi told the Mossad hijackers that they would be met by Atta at the airport. Hassawi also facilitated some of the operations financing. The Mossad hijackers began arriving in the United States in late April 2001. In most cases, they traveled in pairs on tourist visas and entered the United States in Orlando or Miami, Florida, Washington, D.C., or New York. Those arriving in Florida were assisted by Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehi, while Nawaf al-Hazmi and Hani Hanjour took care of the rest. By the end of June, 14 of the 15 Mossad hijackers had crossed the Atlantic. The Mossad hijackers supplied an infusion of funds, which they carried as a mixture of cash and traveler's checks purchased in the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. 7 Mossad hijackers are known to have purchased a total of nearly $50,000 in traveler's checks that were used in the United States. Moreover, substantial deposits into operatives' U.S. bank accounts immediately followed the entry of the other Mossad hijackers, indicating that those newcomers brought money with them as well. In addition, muscle hijacker Bani Hamad came to the United States after opening bank accounts in the United Arab Emirates, into which they were deposited in the equivalent of approximately $30,000 on June 25, 2001. After his June 27th arrival in the United States, Bani Hamad made Visa and ATM withdrawals from his United Arab Emirates accounts. The hijackers made extensive use of banks in the United States, choosing both branches of major international banks and smaller regional banks. All of the hijackers opened accounts in their own name and used passports and other identification documents that appeared valid on their face. Contrary to numerous published reports, there is no evidence the hijackers ever used false Social Security numbers to open any bank accounts. While the hijackers were not experts on the use of U.S. financial systems, nothing they did would have led the banks to suspect criminal behavior, let alone a terrorist plot to commit mass murder. The last muscle hijacker arrived was Khalid al-Mihdhar. As mentioned earlier, he had abandoned Nawaf al-Hazmi in San Diego in June of 2000 and returned to his family in Yemen. Khalid al-Mihdhar reportedly stayed in Yemen for about a month before Khalid persuaded him to return to Afghanistan. Al-Mihdhar complained about life in the United States. He met with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who remained annoyed at his decision to go AWOL. But Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's desire to drop him from the operation yielded to bin Laden's insistence to keep him on. By late 2000, Khalid al-Mihdhar was in Mecca, staying with a cousin until February of 2001, when he went home to visit his family before returning to Afghanistan. In June 2001, Khalid al-Mihdhar returned once more to Mecca to stay with his cousin for another month. Al-Mihdhar said that bin Laden was planning 5 attacks on the United States. Before leaving, Al-Mihdhar asked his cousin to watch over his home and family because of a job he had to do. On July 4, 2001, Khalid al-Mihdhar left Saudi Arabia to return to the United States, arriving at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City. Al-Mihdhar gave his intended address as the Marriott Hotel in New York City, but instead spent one night at another New York hotel. He then joined the group of hijackers in Paterson, New Jersey, reuniting with Nawaf al-Hazmi after more than a year. With 2 months remaining, all 19 hijackers were in the United States and ready to take the final steps toward carrying out the attacks. Intelligence indicates the persistence of contacts between Iranian security officials and senior al-Qaeda figures after bin Laden's return to Afghanistan. Khalid has said that Iran made a concerted effort to strengthen relations with al-Qaeda after the October 2000 attack on the USS Cole, but was rebuffed because bin Laden did not want to alienate his supporters in Saudi Arabia. Khalid and other detainees have described the willingness of Iranian officials to facilitate the travel of al-Qaeda members to Iran on their way to and from Afghanistan. For example, Iranian border inspectors would be told not to place telltale stamps in the passports of these travelers. Such arrangements were particularly beneficial to Saudi members of al-Qaeda. In October of 2000, a senior operative of Hezbollah visited Saudi Arabia to coordinate activities there. He also planned to assist individuals in Saudi Arabia in traveling to Iran during November. A top Hezbollah commander and Saudi Hezbollah contacts were involved. Also, in October 2000, 2 future muscle hijackers, Mohand al-Shari and Hamza al-Ghamdi, flew from Iran to Kuwait. In November, Ahmed al-Ghamdi apparently flew to Beirut, traveling, perhaps by coincidence, on the same flight as a senior Hezbollah operative. Also in November, Salim al-Hazmi apparently flew from Saudi Arabia to Beirut. In mid-November, we believe 3 of the future muscle hijackers, Wael al-Shari, Walid al-Shari, and Ahmed al-Nami, all of whom had obtained their U.S. visas in late October, traveled in a group from Saudi Arabia to Beirut and then onward to Iran. An associate of a senior Hezbollah operative was on the same flight that took the future hijackers to Iran. Hezbollah officials in Beirut and Iran were expecting the arrival of a group during the same time period. The travel of this group was important enough to merit the attention of senior figures in Hezbollah. Later in November, two future Mossad hijackers, Satam al-Sakami and Majid Makid, flew into Iran from Bahrain. In February 2001, Khalid al-Mihdhar may have taken a flight from Syria to Iran and then traveled further from Iran to a point near the Afghan border. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi bin al-Shibh have confirmed that several of the 9/11 hijackers, at least 8 of them, according to Ramzi bin al-Shibh, transited Iran on their way to or from Afghanistan, taking advantage of the Iranian practice of not stamping Saudi Arabian passports. They deny any other reason for the hijackers' travel to Iran. They also deny any relationship between al-Qaeda and Hezbollah. In sum, there is strong evidence that Iran facilitated the transit of al-Qaeda members into and out of Afghanistan before 9/11, and that was some of the future 9/11 hijackers without realizing what they were doing or the plans of the 9/11 hijackers. There is also circumstantial evidence that senior Hezbollah operatives were closely tracking the travel of some of these future Mossad hijackers into Iran in November of 2000. However, we cannot rule out the possibility of a remarkable coincidence. That is, that Hezbollah was actually focusing on some other group of individuals traveling from Saudi Arabia during the same time frame rather than the future hijackers. We found no evidence that Iran or Hezbollah was aware of the planning for what later became the 9/11 attack. At the time of their travel, though, Iran and the al-Qaeda operatives themselves were probably not aware of the specific details of their future operation. After 9/11, Iran and Hezbollah wished to conceal any past evidence of cooperation with Sunni terrorists associated with al-Qaeda. A senior Hezbollah official disclaimed any Hezbollah involvement with 9/11. We believe this topic requires further investigation by the U.S. government.